You are seeing a totally magnificent, magnetic, and magical combination of forces right now. I want to thank you for tuning in. Who am I? What are we doing here? My name is Baratunde Thurston. I'm a writer. I'm an activist. I'm a comedian. I talk trash. I host things. I care about this intersection of race, tech, democracy, and climate. I do a lot of that work through a podcast called How to Citizen, where we make citizen a verb. I used to do it for places like The Onion and The Daily Show. I have a program coming out this summer on PBS called America Outdoors. And all those forces really land beautifully right here, right now with you for this special live streaming program. Let me tell you a bit about what we've been through and why we're here together. I want you to think about the century that we're in, the 1/5 of the way through, and what we've seen so far. We've seen 9/11, the Iraq War, the birth and rise of ISIS, a Syrian refugee crisis, the mass murder of indigenous peoples all over the world. Not to mention surging fires and floods and heat waves and hurricanes, the killing of children in Yemen and Tigray, the desecration of clean air, healthy eating, and a habitable world for ourselves and our descendants. We're in the midst of a global extinction that's worse than the thing that destroyed the dinosaurs. And we're in the midst of the current invasion of Ukraine. All these threads, all these tragedies, they share something. They have something in common. They couldn't have happened without the funding from oil oligarchs. Oligarchs? Is that a thing? Can I just make up a new word? Oligarchs. Let's do that. We're minting new words on this blockchain of humanity right here. Now the world has come together, snapped to attention, dropped into formation real quick to rise against one oil oligarch, one dangerous petrocrat, Vladimir Putin. Thankfully, the world is divesting from Putin's oil, but tragically, the response by other oil oligarchs and their minions and media is still, at this late date, with all we know, drill, baby, drill. Doubling down by creating even more oil oligarchy, more extraction, more self-destruction. It reminds me of the movie Don't Look Up, one of the most streamed films in history. Don't Look Up does a strangely good job of using absurd satire to help us better understand the absurdity of our global situation. In the film, spoiler alert, a comet is hurtling towards Earth. And instead of rallying together, we experience instead this reactionary, divisive, disinformational campaign that says, don't look up. Don't look up at the reality of our situation. Put your head in the sand and just pretend it's not happening. But the protagonists in the film, they launch a movement called Just Look Up, pleading with humanity to just look up at the comet, at reality, to face it, face the apocalypse in order to protect ourselves and each other, which is really the only way to protect ourselves, is if we protect each other and not just each human other. Here we have art imitating life, imitating art. And the movement that thinks the answer to defunding Putin's petrostate is to continue to drill, baby, drill. They're the don't look up crowd of the IRL world. You got big tech billionaires like Elon Musk saying, we need to push to drill more oil. Reminds me a bit of the character in the movie Peter Isherwell, who leads to the entire world being destroyed by a comet. I'm sorry, again, spoiler alert, but it's worth knowing how this ends in the movie so it doesn't end that way in real life. You see, there's still hope. Just as the real world don't look up movement is gaining speed, so is a real world just look up alliance. Indigenous wisdom that the earth is not just a thing to be financialized and extracted from, but a part of us to help us all live. That movement is rising. Renewable energy is spreading and getting cheaper as it's powered by the wind and sun. And let me ask you this, where's the sun? Just look up. Where is the sun? Do it right now. Do it with me. Just look up. Even if, like me, you're inside and there's technically a ceiling between, you know what I'm saying? It's symbolic. The sun is still there. So today we're going to talk with leaders of this Just Look Up Alliance, both indigenous people and Ukrainians fighting for their sovereignty from big oil, visionaries ready to supply Europe with electric heat pumps to wean themselves off of big oil, a plan to tax big oil for its greedy gas gouging prices and give that money back to the hands of ordinary people. We got youth climate activists and some of the most brilliant artists of our time who are inspiring all of us to imagine a better world and then go build it, including the very artist behind Don't Look Up. So stick around as together we create a Just Look Up Alliance. The plan today, we got these special guests. We got Adam McKay, we got Meryl Streep, we got Bill McKibben, we've got indigenous leaders, Ukrainian activists, climate representatives from across the world, and we got you. So use that hashtag Just Look Up. Grab your friends, grab your family, let them know to tune into the stream right now. We've got information, inspiration, calls to action, and more. And speaking of more, let's get right into our next segment because I'm bringing on a very, very dope artist and activist. Many of you know him as Marvel's The Hulk. He's an Oscar-nominated actor, a climate activist, a very early proponent of banning fracking. I just saw him crush it in the Atom Project. Please welcome Mark Ruffalo. What up, Mark?
Hey, Baratunde. So glad to be with you, man. That was a really beautiful opening and framing for this conversation. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And I've seen your work on screen. I've seen your work on the ground. And in this Just Look Up Alliance live stream, we are blending movies, art, climate activism. You are both. Do you see yourself as part of a larger tradition of artists working for social change?
Absolutely. Going way back, not way back, but one of the people who I sat down early with was Harry Belafonte. And he I was just asking him, how do you do this? How do you make this a career? How do you do a career and do this work? And he was just like, you'll know when the time is right, and you'll know when to jump in, and you'll know how deeply to jump. I studied with Stella Adler, who said that every artist had a responsibility to the culture and the people of the time that they're living in, and that it was part of your responsibility to be political and to fight for those people whose voices could not reach the public the way we could. And that the playwrights, she used to say, people should have to pay to go to church and the theater should be free, because she knew how important it was, the platform that we had and the melding of those messages and acting. Get rid of that thing. So then there's Jane Fonda, who I've been following in her footsteps with this, and Leonardo DiCaprio, who's been doing it for years before I came along. So it's I feel like I'm part of a rich tradition of actors, musicians, activists, artists who are been carrying this work since the beginning of time.
That long-standing tradition is nice to hear you acknowledge, especially Brother Belafonte. One of the things I've really noticed you lean into is Indigenous issues. I'd love you to share a bit more about your journey on that. And to my knowledge, you are not a member of any Indigenous nations. So how did you come to care so much, start showing up so much, and transition from that into this No Dirty Banks work that you've been working on lately? What have you been learning?
Honestly, it started. I have the lived experience of being a frontliner. I moved my family to upstate New York in the mid 2000s.
To my knowledge, you are not a member of any Indigenous nations. So how did you come to care so much, start showing up so much, and
Sorry, I think I
transition from that into this dirty bank?
Yeah, so I got to hear you twice on that question. I think there's a repeat, but I moved my family to upstate New York in mid 2000s, and it was right in the front lines of fracking. It was we moved right into the gas lands, and while I was here, I was asked to join that fight, and I did. And along the way, we were enjoined by our native brothers and sisters here in unceded territory, which I live in, of the Lenape people. And it was a Lenape, it was a Haudenosaunee, it was an Onondaga nation. And we were fighting arm in arm. And that was a 5-year struggle. And I was invited into their ceremony. And I learned from their history and their culture. And what I learned was the resilience. They had been systematically were wiped out, or the white people here attempted to wipe them out. And they had so much soul and belief and joy in their work. And they were lifting me up time and time again when things looked the darkest and scariest, and felt like we were going to lose. And they were like, "No, brother, we just keep praying, and we're here. So we've already won. The fact that we exist at all tells you everything there is to know." And then I ended up at Standing Rock, and again, I was brought into their ceremony, Inipe and the teepees. And it's just been a big part of my life, and reconnecting me with our relationship to everything. There's a saying, a word, it's a prayer, 2 words, Madakwe Oyase, which means we are related. We are all related. And that means the fish, the animals in the sky, the animals on the earth, the plants, the sea, our brothers and sisters of the human race, and the stars and the universe. And so those things have resonated with me. They give me deep meaning. And so I keep finding myself fighting for this group of people who really are the dirty secret of the world. I mean, they are probably the most brutalized, marginalized, not the most, but in there, and with so little justice coming their way.
You reminded me of an experience I had just last summer with the Shoshone Bannock people in Idaho, and we were there to do. They have a salmon ceremony every year, and they kept referring to Brother Salmon and Father Tree and these relations that go beyond us. Trees are kind of lungs outside of our body, not just objects to be harvested for productive quote unquote use. So I'm so glad you had such an authentic entry point and something where you found shared interest, and learned some more about the folks who were here first in so many different ways. I want to make space for Alex Ebert to join us and talk about what you both have been working on to help honor that legacy and ensure a better future with this No More Dirty Banks campaign. Folks tuning in now may know Alex from his stage name, Edward Sharpe, which is part of his band Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. He's a Golden Globe winning composer. But what you may not know is that he's a very, very committed activist, much like Mark here, very committed activist. He's recently published an open letter in Variety that got some of Hollywood's biggest stars signing on, demanding that the Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, divest from the Coastal GasLink pipeline, or they would take their money out of its subsidiary City National Bank. Alex Ebert, welcome. Come on in. Are you here?
I'm here.
Good. So tell us about your experiences with this campaign and standing with the Wet'suwet'en people. I understand that RBC didn't really take kindly to being called out like that in a trade publication.
Yeah, no, they didn't take kindly to it. Actually, they created a whole bunch of hijinks to delay the letter and stuff that, sort of beside the point. But In 2016, around the time of Standing Rock, I'm with a bunch of celebrities and we're all sort of into this bank divestment thing. We've realized that
Ooh, we make a little freeze. Did we get a freeze or is it on my end? This is the beauty
Freeze.
of the live streaming era.
And they'd be like, our bank's clean, right? And they'd be like, yeah, our bank's clean. And by our bank, everybody knew we were talking about City National Bank because every single actor and musician banks at City National Bank. They've completely cornered the market. We make up 25% of its clientele. But then I started a website called howtodivest.com. And I'm like, wait, let me just make sure. And I do a quick Google search. I'm like, City National Bank subsidiary. Well, it turns out City National Bank is now an RBC company. I'm like, what's RBC again? I look it up. It's Royal Bank of Canada. Royal was funding some of that pipeline back then. And then, so I write this open letter. I'm like, hey, listen, guys, our bank isn't clean. Our bank is a subsidiary of one of the most aggressive financiers of extractive, extreme fossil fuel extraction and transport. So I write a letter back then, it goes up the poll and we have some movement. RBC then says, we're going to go carbon neutral or carbon zero by 2050. It's like, okay, that's very far away and whatever. And now they say, okay, well, we're transporting low carbon gas. Carbon gas is actually high methane gas. And methane's like 85 more heat trapping than carbon dioxide. So it's a whole, situation. So anyway, then I fall into an activist coma over COVID. I don't know what's going on. I haven't been watching anything.
I love that. Yes, activist.
And I get a call from Mark, and he's like, "Do you know what's going on?" I'm like, "I have no idea. Tell me." And he's like, "Look," and he gives me the lowdown on the Wet'suwet'en situation. And of course, that this time RBC isn't just a bit player; they're the lead financier. So our bank, an RBC, is again, and this time leading the charge on these violations of Indigenous rights. So I'm like, okay, I'm back. And like to your point, to Mark's point about Belafonte saying, you'll know when the time is, like, okay, I've been slumbering for 2 years. It's time. So I wrote up a new letter, and Mark helped out a lot. He introduced me to Melina and Chief Namox, who are here with us today, along with Slado and a bunch of other and I got to really know the issue, wrote the letter, and we did an open letter. And I mean, the real deal is that these banks, these companies don't finance these things themselves. I don't know if anyone really understands that. These companies don't finance, Exxon doesn't finance Exxon things. They go to banks and they get money from banks and they finance. So the people we really got to press are these banks.
What I'm appreciating is there's a level of understanding power, in actions like this. And a lot of us feel very powerless when it comes to how do you change a big thing? How do you stop a looming threat? And so here's one pressure point in the system, the financing of the project. Well, who else is invested in that financing? Oh, Hollywood stars. It turns out these folks have a monopoly on them. So it just feels really savvy. And to the audience who've not heard the term Wet'suwet'en before, this is the indigenous nation whose land this pipeline would be operating. Is that correct? Is that an accurate reflection?
Yeah, that's exactly right. This pipeline's being built straight through this pristine territory of the Wet'suwet'en, and imminently about to be dug under the Wet'suwet'en River, otherwise known as the Maurice River, which is like their actual drinking water and one of the best salmon runs in the world. And pipelines burst all the time, like 10 bursts a day. I'm making that up, but it is literally like some amount in the doubles burst every day. There's very little oversight on these things, and it almost guaranteed to destroy some of this. And it's just it's a travesty.
Yeah. Well, the turning that travesty into an opportunity for people to use whatever power they have to get something done, that's the opposite, right? That's the life that comes out of potential death. And you set this up at nomoredirtybanks.com. So I'm going to encourage folks watching now, check out nomoredirtybanks.com to learn more, to sign up, to take action. Maybe you're not a celebrity with an account at City National Bank, but maybe you know some. Maybe you are a fan of someone and you could check with them and remind them. Many people don't even know that they have this opportunity to try to exert pressure to preserve our only habitable planet in this particular way. And speaking of Wet'suwet'en, I'd love to bring in the voices more directly, of this community, of this nation. We'll be joined by Hereditary Chief Na'Moks. Title he carries as Chief Na'Moks is literally thousands of years old, as are all the hereditary chief titles of the Wet'suwet'en Nation. Alongside Mark, we're going to be joined with Melina Laboken Massimo, here to speak with us more about this No More Dirty Banks campaign. Melina is a longtime Indigenous activist from the Cree Nation who's been on the front lines of water and land protection, divestment, and climate work for over 20 years. That's a way of saying that Melina has earned a well-earned rest. Yet she's here. Chief Na'Moks is here. Now, Melina is the co-founder of Indigenous Climate Action and the founder of Sacred Earth Solar. Welcome. I see everybody's on the screen together. Thank you so much for making even more time and space in a world that's taken so much time and space. Thank you for being here, and thank you for what you're doing. The world is just starting to learn about the Colonial Gas Link, the CGL pipeline, and its violation of Indigenous rights. Can you tell me, Chief Na'Moks, first, what have you had to endure, at the hands of militarized police? Perhaps more importantly, how have you endured it? So many folks don't even know this story. Can you kind of drop us in with what this experience has been?
Absolutely. I will start. Traditionally, it's Denny's 8U, Tsaka's 8U, Sky's 8. That is male chiefs, leaders, those who will be leaders, those who are chiefs. Tsaka's 8 is females. They are the true source of where we come from. They gave us life. They are the leaders. They are the future generations. And Sky's 8, those who will be chiefs, those who will be leaders. And that is all of you. This opportunity to stand up together, united, makes you powerful. It makes everybody powerful. It takes that power away from industries and government that want to ruin the land and the planet. They enhance this climate crisis we're in every day. I was born in a time of crisis. I do not know a day from my childhood on when we were not in crisis management. Do you know that we're one of the last? Our 22,000 square kilometers, unceded, non-treaty, undefeated lands is one of the last to have European contact in North America. This is why we keep it so pristine. In my lifetime, as I said, Europeans didn't exist on our territory in my grandmother's time, and she carried the name of Na'Moks. When she passed on, the name was passed on to my uncle to caretake it until I was ready. That's how long they take to prepare you. I love the very fact that before my grandmother was Chief Na'Moks, she was the Candian Kia. That means big voice. That means speak for the trees, speak for the animals, speak for the fish, speak for the water, speak for the... That's what the Candian Kia means. And it's more than the damage that they're doing to the land. It's what they're doing to us spiritually. When they come to our doors with axes and power saws to get at our people, our women, and they call that legal in Canada. When they come to rip up our graves, our sacred sites, that's illegal in our law, but it is legal in Canada. They get a permit, they do it. I often say, if I went to where your grandparents lived and I dug up their grave, I would go to jail. Here, it's permitted. Unfortunately, with all the violence that is coming to us, we've come to expect it. We know every winter when the snow comes from the sky, so are the helicopters and the armed personnel. That is what happens every winter. I'll never be a refugee in our own territory, ever. This is home. We have nowhere to go. This is home. We're not going to be a burden on somebody else. We have a right to be on our land. We have a right to be Wet'suwet'en. We have a right to be human. They ask, how do we endure it? I don't know anything else except to be Wet'suwet'en. I don't know anything else except to be Chief Na'Moks. I don't know anything else except our Kunga, our history, where we come from, why we do it. We often say, and we speak because of what our elders and our former chiefs who have passed on now have said to us. We don't do it for ourselves, we do it for the future. We do it for the betterment of all. I remember my grandmother speaking. When she talked about the world, she didn't just mean Wet'suwet'en Territory. She didn't just mean British Columbia. She didn't just mean North America. She talked about the world. They seen what was coming. They know, and we know, that when they come in with these here boom and bust mentality that, the environment is only a price. Human rights, Indigenous rights are only something that they need to overcome and ignore. That is not right. That's why the importance of being together in all of these actions, reminding each other that we're all human. We all need clean water. We all need clean air. We all need good food. And for us, like I said, in this short period of time, the damage that they've done and what they plan to do is irreversible. It is what we do today that can change it. Tomorrow is too late in my mind. We allow elected officials to make decisions, and they're steered by industry. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. We stand up and we're criminalized for being Wet'suwet'en. We're criminalized for protecting clean water, the air. Water flows and the wind blows. We look beyond our boundaries of our nation to what the world and how we affect them. We look at how it affects everybody downstream. We look at how it affects everybody that breathe air. This clean air that we breathe, it's like the snow in behind me here. I've been to places where the snow is black. That's not right. I've been to places where you can't drink the water.
There's places where it's not snowing, and it used to. There's so much radical change, and I appreciate your insistence on your existence, Chief Na'moks. It's really, really powerful to experience you in this way. I'd love to layer in Melina as a part of this conversation. Melina living in being from one of the largest fossil fuel extraction zones in the world, these Alberta tar sands. Melina, can you tell us more about the No More Dirty Banks campaign? I saw as we were gathered in the green room before, there was familiarity with you and Mark and Chief Na'moks, like y'all hang out all the time. And Alex, what's going on from your perspective with the campaign? What's it been like living through this difficulty and this challenge?
Hi, thank you. Tansegwakia, Nia Melina Miawap and Labokan Masmo, Nia Nihiao Kinaskuntanawao. That is my language for saying greetings, everyone today that's joining us and listening to our voices going out into the world. I'm so grateful to be here with you all, Baratunde and Mark and Chief Na'moks, and all those that stand with us on this No More Dirty Banks campaign. And yeah, I come from an impacted community. I was born into a small reserve called Little Buffalo, and it is a Nihiao Indigenous Cree community. My childhood was back in the day when I grew up in the horse and wagon with my kukum and my grandmother and grandfather and my family and community, that we went into the pristine, beautiful land that Chief Na'moks just talked about. In our territory, it is now one of the largest industrial extraction zones on the planet. It's called the tar sands, the Alberta tar sands. At the age of 7, by the time I was 7, my community was blockading oil and gas and logging companies that were encroaching into our homelands, invading our homelands and taking over. And now, just within my lifetime, the level of destruction is staggering to the tune of, we have by 2014 was #1 in deforestation in the world because of the Alberta tar sands. So we're talking about impact zones where we once, as I was a child, had living, thriving, pristine ecosystems are now completely contaminated, toxic zones. And we're talking about the largest industrial impact zone, as big as destroying the entire state of Florida, as big as in destroying England and Wales combined. We're talking about refineries, upgraders, making it hard for communities to breathe, massive oil spills. In my community, we had a massive oil spill in 2011, where when people fly over, like Leonardo DiCaprio did, people call it Mordor. When I flew with Jane Fonda, she said it was Mordor, and it is hard to see. It is like a knife to the heart when you come to our homelands, because it is complete and utter destruction. And why we are targeting the Royal Bank of Canada is because they are the #1 financier of tar sands in the world. It's why tar sands is why Canada will never be able to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions like it agrees to at every international climate negotiation it's ever gone to. And even just within the last 2 years, we have seen banks increase tar sands funding by 50%. So this is why we talk about these issues like the No More Dirty Banks campaign, because our communities are sacrifice communities. We shoulder the brunt of environmental degradation and have now for 20, 30 years. And now the world is starting to feel that impact, that consequences through climate change because of Mother Earth's destruction. So RBC, let's be clear, is financing the destruction of my homelands all the way to the Wet'suwet'en people's homelands. I was at the RBC's AGM in 2009, so we've been looking at RBC's investments since, for over a decade. And it's not new, the human rights violations that they are implementing. And, RBC claims to be a climate conscious bank, but yet, since acquiring City National Bank, the Hollywood Bank of the Stars, RBC has spent over $160 billion in fossil fuel finance, which has made it one of the world's most aggressive tar sands and fossil fuel extraction financiers. And so that's why we've started the No More Bank campaign with Alex and Mark and Chief Namuks and the Wet'suwet'en people, hereditary chiefs. And we have three demands. Three demands is RBC pull out of the CGL pipeline. RBC uphold and respect the rights of Indigenous peoples. RBC stop financing fossil fuel extraction, which is exacerbating the climate change. Because we need to be very clear. Banks are funding climate chaos, and this needs to stop. So please, please, please join us, sign the letter, and take action like over 65 celebrities from Hollywood already have at nomoredirtybanks.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Melina. Mark, you're a celebrity. You know other celebrities, and I'm a celebrity in certain rooms, but not as globally as you. And what I do understand about this business is there's infrastructure in place. There's managers and agents and business managers, and they decide where a lot of folks in this business bank. There's like a package deal. It's probably how City National became so influential, is because a bunch of business managers brought all this business to them. How is this being received by your peers? Do you see folks being willing to pull away? Are you having difficult conversations with people, or are they getting it pretty quickly?
I have to say, like I said, I've been an activist for 10 years in this space, and I've asked a lot of my friends and colleagues to participate in one thing or another over the years, and I've never seen so many people just immediately jump on. I mean, I sent emails and texts out to probably 70, 80 people, and most of them responded within an hour or two. And it just goes to show how important this moment is and how it crystallizes the kind of the movement that we're in. People understand coming out of COP26 that there's the governmental response to this is not going to be enough. And I also think people are finally understanding, like, where is this happening? And it's the funding. For years, I was saying, fund the fighters, fund the people on the front lines, and let them tell their stories, and give them money and give them the resources so the people can hear them, and then we'll make the changes. But now I'm starting to realize that's not enough. That's important, but now we have to fight the funders. We have to go after the funding. And this isn't just about RBC. This is about every bank, every major bank in the world right now, where all of us have our money today. And 10 years ago, Baratunde, there was nowhere else to go. But today there are. And there's new banks that are clean where we can take our money. So this Drop Your Dirty Bank isn't just about RBC. It's about every bank. And if you want to do something really important on climate change, move your money away from where it's being spent to fund this. That's probably the most powerful thing we can do right now.
Who else has been signing on to this No More Dirty Banks campaign?
Oh, it's Leonardo DiCaprio. It's Scarlett Johansson, Robert Downey Jr., Meryl Streep now. Susan Sarandon, Jane Fonda. I mean, the list goes on and on. Josh Gad. It's just
so from the RBC side, from the Dirty Bank side, how are they responding? Are they blowing you off? Are they trying to salvage the business? Are they making promises that you're not sure they're willing to keep? What's their response been so far? Do you think they're scared?
Listen, I've been in talks with them for 2 months, and there was a lot of, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I said, listen, meet with the chiefs. You haven't met with them ever. They've been asking for a meeting with you for 25 years. That took a lot of doing, and they finally did, and they heard the requests, and basically they refused to come to the follow-up meeting. And we couldn't get Dave McKay, the CEO, to have enough respect for the hereditary chiefs, the people who preceded Canada by thousands of years, who are the rightful title owners of the land that this pipeline is plowing through. He would not meet with them. And it's this colonial thinking of, if the native, we'll consult, we'll listen to the native people unless they say no. And if they say no, then we'll just ignore them. We'll erase them. We'll pretend like they don't exist. And that's kind of what the response from RBC has been. Even right now, they're not responding. They threw out the premier of British Columbia yesterday to say, hey, actors, shut up, keep acting. You don't have any. What do you know about economies?
The
what do
shut
you
up
know
and
about
dribble move?
Keep dribbling, keep doing what you do. No one wants to hear from you.
Right.
That's been the
what's
response.
In terms of the action, what are you, Alex, the Chiefs, Melina, like, what are y'all? Is it letter writing? Is it tweeting? Is it aggressive phone calls? Are you going into the bank with suitcases to pull out all your cash? Like, what does this actually look like?
Who wants to take that? I've been talking a lot. Alex?
Well, Alex is not on the call, but I will say something really quick, but I do want to leave space for Chief Namux to respond. But for us at No More Dirty Banks, it is people, please go to the website. People learn about the issues and then also sign up in the tool. It's going to RBC, like a letter is going to RBC. Over 8,000 people have already sent a letter to RBC in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en people, in solidarity with impacted communities like mine, to see divestment happen from RBC and CNB and all banks, like Mark said. So it is take action, join us. We will be again at the Royal Bank of Canada's AGM on April 7th. So there's a lot of actions, and action happened yesterday in LA. So things on the ground, online, everywhere. So just join us at nomoredirtybanks.com, and I'll let Chief Namux say more, because it is his community.
Exactly as you say, like, to sit still and do nothing, you're actually agreeing with them. If you're silent, you're agreeing with them. You take those actions, you make those moves. Money doesn't have a conscience. Humans do. Use your conscience, use your heart, use what you know, and take those actions. If you actually think about it, it's only a couple of pieces of paper you got to fill out and you're done. It's not that hard. Aside.
Yeah.
And also, just wanted to say, Baratunde, Mark is, has a little, he may switch over to a bank, so there's future things that are yet to be seen.
Yeah, listen, I've had phone calls. Everyone's reaching out to me like, where do we go? Where can we go? And we've been working on some places for people to land that we know are clean, that are already doing good work in the communities that we care about. And so there's a place to go, and people are ready to go. We're waiting on what is RBC going to do? What's CNB going to do? What's City National Bank? What are RBC going to do to stop this? That's the question.
And it seems to me, look, we're all kind of complicit, compromised, invested without our full conscious choice in a capitalist system, which involves being aligned with decisions we wouldn't make. So even the idea of a perfectly clean bank, for me, that feels like ideal, maybe not real, but certainly there are many cleaner banks. And the point is better, like, let's move away from something that's devastating and destructive to something that could actually be positive and regenerative and creative. This brings me to the ideological base and even the spiritual base of how we operate. The narrative ocean, as I heard it described, that we actually swim in and assume to be true. And that is to say, the idea of capitalism and extraction and nature just as a financial resource isn't the only way to view the world. And it hasn't been the prevailing view of the world by all the peoples who've inhabited it for all this time. Indigenous wisdom has a different perspective on what our relationship could be, on how finance could work, on how a lot of things could work. And I'd love to hear from Chief Namax first. Do you see an increasing relevance of this longstanding perspective from Indigenous nations, given the crisis point that we are in right now?
You know, unfortunately, humans, they don't miss anything till it's gone. You know, it's just the way it is. With us, you know, as hereditary chiefs, we simply put forward the words that have been said ever since we became Wet'suwet'en, ever since Hudakai, the creator above us, the one that created land, air, water, put us here as caretakers. You know, will the mindset change? Well, it has to. There is no other choice. And we simply say, go to the very core of it. Clean air, clean water. Human cannot survive without that. And you know, this here extractive industries that they have is actually putting a price tag on everything that we have. This is why we fight so hard. This is why we fight so dearly. We give it our all. We always say for the betterment of all. And we say, you know, we are taking away the inheritance of our children, our grandchildren, every time we damage something. It is our duty to leave that inheritance of clean water, clean. It's really not that hard to grasp, except if you're in industry and except if you're an elected official. They can't grasp it. Money, again, does not have conscience. I don't know how to cook money. I sure know how to cook moose meat, salmon. I know how to do my vegetables, my berries, and my medicines. I don't know how to cook or eat money.
Yeah. Money's not so tasty. Thank you for that. Mark, do you have any brief comment on being exposed to and kind of in both worlds here before I let Melina close this out, in terms of the world of capitalism and its extractive view versus, you know, what you've been exposed to and trying to amplify on the Indigenous perspective?
Only that we can transition away from this. You know, the one thing about the fossil fuel era is it did bring us a technological era and the industrial era. And I want to thank them for it. But we're ready to move on, and we have the technology to do it today. And, you know, let us go. You know, stop impeding us. Stop using the governmental levers of power to stay in power. You know, you got what you wanted. You got what you needed. You have more money than you could ever want. And let us be. Let us take the world into a more just, you know, non-extractive economy that shares with all of us. And it's the Indigenous people, why we keep seeing this story told over and over and over again throughout the world, where Indigenous people are on the front line, is because they are the keepers of the future. And they are a commodity to us that we have to, they're holding the wisdom now to save the planet, to save the species, to save all the creatures. And we have to put them in leadership now. We can't keep ignoring them. We've ignored them for so long, and now it's time to give them a place at the table and follow their wisdom and instruction.
You're at this table with us right now, Chief Namax. Thank you so much, Mark Ruffalo. Thank you so much, Melina. Any closing thoughts, considerations, words before we go to our first break?
I think really for us to truly solve the climate crisis, we need a global paradigm shift back to understanding and living within the natural laws of Mother Earth. And this is a widespread understanding of Indigenous people and what we have always known. What we do to the land, we do to ourselves. And humanity has lost this sacred connection to Mother Earth, and that's why we are now living in an era of consequence. So we must protect the people that are safeguarding 80% of the world's biodiversity, which is Indigenous peoples. But yet we are being criminalized around the world, here in Canada and all across the world, for standing up to protect our homeland. So please stand with us. Go to nomoredirtybanks.com. Thank you so much for joining us and being with us and letting us speak today. Hi.
Thank you, Melina. Thank you, Chief Namax. Thank you, Mark Ruffalo. I'm Baratunde Thurston. You're tuned in to the Just Look Up Alliance live stream, where we're connecting threads between Ukraine, between the earth, between Indigenous wisdom, and the power we have through our money to change the circumstances involving all of that. We have a brief video to share with you. And when we come back, we're going to speak with a Ukrainian climate activist. We're going to hear from Bill McKibben. We got Meryl Streep in the house. So I'm trying to act cool about it. I'm not cool. I'm freaking out inside. This is acting cool. So please stay tuned. Visit nomoredirtybanks.com. Throw out that hashtag #JustLookUp to your networks if that's how you can use your power, and tune in to this brief video. I'll be right back.
Right now, major banks like the Royal Bank of Canada are financing a fracked gas pipeline bulldozing through the land of the Wet'suwet'en Nation in northern British Columbia, Canada. The Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs never consented to this pipeline construction through their territories, which would risk the sacred headwaters of the Wazinkwah River. But here's where it gets complicated. The Supreme Court of Canada recognized Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs as rightful title holders of the land. But corporations still get away with consulting only elected leadership put in place by the colonial government and not the rightful title holders. And what makes this even more urgent is a recent militarized police violence by the Canadian Police, the RCMP. For the last 3 years, and as recently as last November, the RCMP violently arrested and detained non-violent Indigenous land defenders and journalists.
You're trespassing on Wet'suwet'en land.
Publicly, RBC makes grand commitments to respect Indigenous rights, ethical investing, and climate action promises. But not only is RBC funding this pipeline to the tune of $315 million, it is the linchpin to a $6.5 billion loan backed by 26 other banks. Even though RBC has made commitments to Indigenous human rights, they continue to fund Coastal GasLink's violence against the Wet'suwet'en people.
This is our land, our sacred headwaters, Wazinkwah, which is the lifeblood of our entire nation. CGL is racing to complete drilling to microtunnel under the Wazinkwah without the consent of the hereditary chiefs. RBC's financial ties to this project make them responsible for endangering our drinking water, our salmon, and criminalizing us as Wet'suwet'en people on our own land. RBC's AGM is coming up on April 7th. They'll be announcing their sustainable business practices and the immense profits to their shareholders and to the public. Help us hold them accountable for funding genocide.